It is time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, showbiz, sport and beyond. Tonight, the very definition of a British national treasure. Actor, comedian, raconteur, presenter and, of course, panto icon Christopher Biggins. Destined for a life on the stage, a 17-year-old Biggins took the lead role at the age of just 17, as I say, in a production of Molière's entertaining farce, Le Médecin Malgré Lui. The rest was history. There followed a 5-decade-long career on the small and big screen. In Upstairs, Downstairs, Porridge, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, I, Claudius, Minder and many more. Christopher memorably hosted Surprise, Surprise, a show featuring emotional family reunions alongside another TV legend, the late great Cilla Black. Having made his mark in acting and presenting, it was just a matter of time before reality TV would come a-knocking. And Biggins demonstrated his enduring popularity by comfortably winning I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in 2007. Since then, Celebrity MasterChef, Celebrity The Chase, Celebrity Come Dine With Me, Celebrity Big Brother, you name it, he's done it. And following a long and glorious career in panto, in 2017, he received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Great British Pantomime Awards. We're talking showbiz royalty, folks, and it's my huge honour and delight to welcome Christopher Biggins to GB News. Biggins, welcome.
Mark, how lovely to see you. Can I ask you a question? Can I start off? How often do you wash your hair?
Every day.
No, you're lying.
Well, I normally wash it every day, and then I didn't wash it today. I asked Mrs. Dolan, do I need to? She said no. I realise it's a disaster.
Yeah, it is a bit of a disaster.
But I think it's a scorched earth policy by Mrs. Dolan.
We'll have a go at her then.
Polly Middlehurst, our brilliant news anchor, thinks that she wants to make sure I'm not attractive to other women. I think that box was ticked long ago, Christopher.
I love it.
Christopher, it's great to see you in the studio and in fine fettle. I'm really, really well. It's wonderful to see you. I also want to talk about the rest of your career because there's so much more to come. I know that. You've got so much energy, so much enthusiasm. But can we start at the beginning? Did you have acting aspirations as a child?
Not really. What happened was, I was born in Oldham, outside Manchester, a place called Royton.
You kept the accent,
I kept the accent, but my mother hated it up there. So after 3 weeks, she bundled me into a Pickford's lorry with my father, wrapped me in cotton wool, which I still have an aversion to this day, and the van drove us down to Salisbury, because she was a Hampshire hog, and she was from Southampton. That's where the Hampshire bit came in.
Oh, I see.
So what happened was, then we set up home in Salisbury, and I went to school, and we had I had a great Auntie Vi, who was a terrible snob. And I, by this time, was not talking northern. I was talking with a Wiltshire accent, a country boy, as all my family were. And my aunt hated it, so she insisted I have elocution lessons, which is why I speak so wonderfully to this day. And the woman who gave me elocution lessons was Mrs. Christian, and she saw something in me, and a spark, and she encouraged it. And I had also a music teacher who taught me the piano, and so badly, because I can only play Daffodil Dell to this day. And they encouraged me, and we did all sorts of wonderful things at school. But then what happened was, Salisbury had one of the great repertory companies in the country. And it was... I went to see Mr. Salzberg, who ran the theatre. I said, can I have a job? He said, you can come for 2 weeks. I went for 2 weeks, and I stayed 2 years.
What age were you when you approached
16 and a half.
That rep company? So that's when it officially began at 16 and a half. Began your career. And were you an extrovert as a child? Were you a natural performer? Were you the funny kid in the class?
I think possibly I was. I had a best friend called John Brown, and we used to go on cross-country runs, which, of course, John and I hated. And we used to make them into walks. And the other boys were furious because they had to wait for us to come back. And we used to come back laden with Flora.
Who's she?
We used to pick on the way back home. And so we were considered to be the jokers.
Biggins, the inventor of the cross-country stroll.
Exactly. Oh, it was lovely.
And school plays as well, I would have thought.
Yes, we did lots of school plays, and it was really good fun. And Salisbury was fantastic because they were the good old days where, sadly, they don't happen now, and young kids can't train. They can go to drama school, but they can't learn about theatre, which is so important, and repertory companies now don't exist. I mean, after 2 years of what we've been through with the pandemic, I mean, theatre hardly exists. And it's still in a bad way.
Devastating. All of those skills that have been lost because whether it's actors or indeed directors, lighting people, sound and tech guys, they've had to go and get other jobs, haven't they?
Yes. And it's I mean, for instance, in New York, they were given billions and billions of dollars by the government to survive. We were given nothing. In our
even Andrew Lloyd Webber had ran into financial problems.
Oh, and Cameron McIntosh. It's been terrible because they put on these big shows, and what we need is an audience, and the audience is tourists, and the tourists haven't come back. So what's suffering? Theatre, restaurants, everything else that revolves around that entertainment.
So what kind of childhood did you have, theatre and performing aside? Was it a happy childhood?
Oh, it was I was very, very lucky. I was an only child. Until when I left home at 18 and a half years, 2 years after being at Salisbury Rep. And I was an only child, and I was very proud of being an only child. And my mother, I was going to Bristol Vic Theatre School, and my mother announced as I was leaving home, she said, by the way, I'm pregnant. And I said, don't be so stupid. I mean, the thought of one's parents still doing it was appalling.
Absolutely.
And I've got a younger brother who is divine, but he's not like a brother, he's like a friend. Yeah. And he's terrific, and he has, 2 lovely children, and I adore, and so it's...
And he's not in showbiz, he's a civilian with a proper job.
Driver.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which is great. He's just become that.
Yeah.
And he's lovely. I mean, but, I don't really know him as a brother, because I was away.
Was there a career master plan for you?
No, never. I just enjoyed what I did, and and I never thought about anything about how I was going to do it, or it just all fell into place. I mean, I was very lucky. And people come to me for advice now about going into this business, and I always say, don't do it. And then I say, however, if you want to do it, it's a hard job. And it's not anything to do with talent. Talent doesn't come in. It's being in the right place at the right time. And I think I've proved that in the 50-odd years, and it's just gone from... And you mentioned the jungle. I mean, people say to me, what is the greatest thing you've ever done in your career? Well, I've done wonderful comedy shows. I've done wonderful dramas like I, Claudius and Poldark, all those sort of things. But my greatest achievement is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here.
A reminder that the great British public love Biggins.
Well, that was the thing that really got me. I mean, I was absolutely so touched. And I was in the final with a model called Janice Dickinson from America.
Very glamorous lady.
Yeah, and hideous too. And she was convinced she'd won. And it was wonderful. There were the two of us sort of side by side. And she was ready to take the title, and she didn't take the title. I took it, and she was furious with me. So she left immediately Australia and went back to America. Sour grapes. But anyway, it was the most... I to this day, I will never forget the public who was so wonderful.
Well, that's right. You were up against Katie Hopkins, Rodney Marsh, the ex-football player, the actress Gemma Atkinson. You didn't hit it off with Janice, but what about the rest of the group?
Oh, they were lovely. Keris Matthews, who was fantastic. We all got on and said we had such a laugh, I can't tell you. And it is a wonderful experience.
Yeah. So did you think twice about going on? Because you must have spoken to your agent and thought, am I going to do this? This could backfire horribly.
Well, the boys, Ant and Dec, who are such stars, I mean, they're wonderful guys, and they were always very keen to have me in it. And they always asked me when I was going to do pantomime, so I could never do it. Yeah. So one year they asked me in January, I finished the pantomime, they said, would you do it next year? So I said, I might as well. And, lovely Barbara Windsor then.
Did you struggle in the jungle at all?
No, not at all. I loved every moment of it.
But what about the sleep deprivation, the
spiders? I slept the best I've ever slept in my life. Really? I mean, I slept out in the open air in a sort of tree house, and I remember the first night thinking to myself, now what is going to crawl over me? And after I thought that thought, I just went fast asleep. And it happened every single night. I had the best sleep ever. It was wonderful.
I could talk to you all night about the people that you've worked with, other legends. Cilla Black, she was a very, very good friend of yours, and you co-hosted Surprise, Surprise. So this was, you keep reinventing yourself every decade or so. You became a TV presenter of the 80s. Surprise, Surprise reunited family members with each other. It was a very human show, very joyful. Cilla Black, they don't make them like that anymore, do they?
They certainly don't. I mean, she was fantastic, and we hit it off immediately. And because she was such a star, she had to have a new dress every show, which meant I had to have, this is good old days of television when there was money around, I had to have a suit. And so she introduced me to Tommy Nutter, who was a wonderful, wonderful suit maker. I mean, marvellous man. And Doug Hayward. So I had all these suits.
Yeah.
You know, it was wonderful.
Doug Hayward made suits for Michael Caine.
He did, absolutely.
So did you get a new suit every week?
Every week, and shoes that were handmade for me. Shirts that were handmade. I mean, it was another life.
It was a golden era of TV entertainment, ITV. Was it LWT who made Surprise, Surprise?
It was, LWT.
Massive show. And so you did, and of course the sitcoms. I mean, you've worked with, you starred in Porridge. Some mothers do, Avon, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads. Where do you start? David Jason, Ronnie Barker. I mean, tell me about working with Ronnie Barker, because we knew the comedian, we didn't know the man.
Ronnie Barker was one of the most extraordinary men because he was a huge star. You know, I mean, him and the two Ronnies were huge. Then he went off to do a lot of other things, Ronnie Barker, as did Corbett. But what was wonderful about Ronnie was if he felt one of his lines was better said by someone else. And bearing in mind, Dick Clement and Ian Lafrene had written these lines, the greatest comedy writers ever, he would give it to you because he was looking at the whole show. He wasn't looking egotistically at his own performance. He was so generous. And I think that shows in what it ended up as a great comedy series, and still to this day is on television. I mean, in those days we used to get 20 million viewers. Now, it's ridiculous.
And also, he was a generous performer because, in many ways, as it was Fletcher, his character, wasn't it, in Porridge, he was to a degree the straight man, actually.
Yes.
And it was a lot of the others that were sort of, the bonkers characters around him. But of course, he demonstrated that selflessness in the two Ronnies too by being an unnamed or an uncredited writer.
That's right.
On the two Ronnies.
Yeah, he was very clever.
Yeah.
I think he wrote the famous sketch...
Four Candles.
Four Candles. I think he wrote that.
Amazing. Yeah, that's something I've heard. Look, you've never been overly focused on politics in your career, but you were an admirer of Margaret Thatcher.
I certainly was. I'm a conservative. I don't mind anybody knowing it.
Did you have to keep that quiet at certain points in your career?
Yes, I did. And I think, I always attach I'm conservative to the left. Because, there's a lot of things going on at the moment which aren't good. The fact that we have food banks, that we have people worried about whether they're going to pay their electricity and gas, all those sort of things. There's a lot wrong with our country, but then every country is wrong.
You're a one-nation Tory, a Tory wet, if you like.
Absolutely. Yes, I like that. That's a very good term. But, I mean, I did meet Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher was the most extraordinary woman ever.
I think you said that she had principle and conviction, but also you admired the showbiz factor too, that she had presence.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember when, towards the end of her life, she was not Prime Minister, because, of course, like all Prime Ministers, they don't know how to finish it. They go downhill radically. But anyway, I was at a memorial service for Charles Forte at Westminster Abbey, and I could see her approaching, and she had a man with her, and I heard him say, Christopher Biggins, actor. She went, Christopher, how lovely. I mean, it was so brilliant. What a technique.
Yeah. So she's as much of a lovey as anyone else.
Oh, my God, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and she turned it on for you.
Turned it on, and, of course, made me feel wonderful that she remembered my name, but I heard him say Christopher Biggins, actor, but it didn't matter.
And staying on politics, you've been in, some of the most admired sitcoms of all time. What are your thoughts on so-called political correctness now, or wokeism, cancel culture, trigger warnings at the beginning of episodes of Fawlty Towers?
Don't even talk to me about it. My blood boils. I mean, why do we have to have this? And it's for a minority of people. I'm
not sure it's for anyone. I've never met anyone that is triggered by Fawlty Towers.
I agree. And also, how would Benny Hill go down nowadays? Or, Dick Emery.
Benny Hill would probably be burned at the stake.
I think he would. You're right. But he was funny.
Correct.
And we all laughed.
And actually, the male characters in Benny Hill were the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's Carry On films, the same thing.
Absolutely. Lovely Barbara Windsor, the star of all those films.
Another good friend of yours, Barbara.
Yes, and Kenneth Williams. I mean, they would have been no careers at all, would they have had?
We will talk about Eurovision after the break,
yes.
And you've been kind enough to stay for us. We're going to chat with Jay Aston from Bucks Fizz. But Wogan, of course, made the Eurovision in this country because of his witty commentary. You worked with Terry for a long time. Just before we came on air, we both used the word genius.
Oh, I mean, he was definitely a genius, and he knew how to handle people. I mean, like Graham does. I mean, Graham Norton is a brilliant chat. He's the best chat host we have. And he's wonderful for the Eurovision Song Contest. He's very, very funny. Yeah. Witty, quick, I mean, everything. But that was what Terry Wogan was. I mean, he was a good teacher, Terry, if you listen to Terry. And of course, he never did any homework. Yeah. That which I think is great, you know. He just knew what to talk about, and it never, ever failed him. And
were there two Terrys? I mean, was it, you know, what you see is what you get, or did he have a private side?
No, it was what you saw is what you got. I mean, his wife is lovely. He has lovely sons, and one of them has a pizza chain of restaurants. Well, I hope he does, because, of course, the restaurant business is gone downhill. So,
I met his son, and that's right. Really, Mark, I think
yes.
It's Mark Wogan, a really talented chef and restaurateur, a pizza chain, as you say. I think he was doing. I met him halfway through lockdown, and he was doing deliveries and, you know, orders from home and things like that. So let's hope he prevailed.
Yes,
but very fond memories of his dad as well.
Yeah, well, you know, he was a real icon. I mean, he was fantastic, Terry.
I think so. Well, before we get to the break, a quick word on politics. How do you rate Boris Johnson?
Well, I used to like him very much, and I still do, because there's no one else to take over, in my view. You know, there's no other political party, I don't think. There's no individual, I can say, in the Conservative Party who I'd like to see. And, you know, he is doing the best he can. I mean, you know, he's trying... Partygate sends me twisted round the room. I can't bear it if they go on and on about that, because it
also they didn't invite Biggins.
No, but you know, they keep bringing that up, and he's got so many more things to do.
And then Starmer falls flat on his face with his own Beergate scandal.
I know.
They're as bad as each other, aren't they?
They all are.
And what about Brexit? Were you? I mean, a personal question, but did you support Brexit?
I did, and I also have friends who absolutely say to me, you made the wrong decision, who are business people who are suffering. But other business people are thriving. You know, I rang a dear friend of mine, Anthony Bamford, Lord Bamford of JCB, and he was very pro it. And for all the right reasons, and he's, you know, but other people I know have suffered.
Well, I voted Remain, but I think it looks to have been a good idea now, whether it was the vaccine rollout or trade deals with other countries. Our sovereignty is back, and also it's a democracy.
Yes.
People voted to leave.
Absolutely.
And I think there would have been a democratic crisis, possibly even a civil unrest, if the decision had been overturned.
And you can't ignore that. I mean, that was the decision.
The will of the people. The will of the people. And last but not least, before the break, the Queen.
Yes.
The ultimate showbiz figure, who is not in the best of health, but you were just saying, actually, how fantastic she looked today.
Yes, at the Windsor Castle for the horse show.
Yeah, brilliant.
And it's very interesting, she didn't turn up at the House of Lords the other day, but she was there for the horses. And she hates theatre. Absolutely hates theatre. Right? Yeah, I met her one of the first times I met her, I was doing Regent's Park Open Air Theatre, and I was playing Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. In fact, I was the best Puck in the park that year. And
so I've heard.
What happened was that she wouldn't come and see it because it was too. But so we put on a special production, a George Bernard Shaw, that's right, play, which was about Shakespeare meeting Queen Elizabeth I. And it was a 20-minute play, and it was perfect. But I was chosen to meet her in my dressing room. Now, the dressing room was no bigger than your desk. In fact, your desk is bigger than my dressing room. So she came in, and Philip had to stand in the doorway with David Conville, and who was the manager of the theatre, and ran the theatre. And there was me. And so David said, this is Christopher Biggins, Mum, who plays Puck, and also, I play something else. Anyway, she said, how lovely. I said, well, it is lovely, Mum, because, you know, and these are the costumes, and I showed her the costume. I was talking rubbish. And these are cards, greeting cards, which people send you on the first nights. And I went on and on and on. Poor woman sat, you know, or stood there in disbelief what I was talking about. All of a sudden, she said, and what are those? And she pointed to some shoes, Puck shoes, and I brought them down. I said, these are Puck shoes. And she turned to Philip and said, look, Philip, Puck shoes. Whereupon I screamed with laughter. There's this wonderful picture of me laughing and her looking very po-faced. But she has a wonderful sense of humour.
Just brilliant. You've met her several times,
yes.
and only happy memories. Wonderful stuff. Well, she's the Queen of the United Kingdom. You're the King of Showbiz.